Welcome, Shay. I'm so excited to bring you on the podcast today, and we're going to talk all about macros. So, before we dive into that conversation, I want everyone to learn a little bit more about you and why you are so interested and fascinated with macros. So, take it away,
Yeah.
Shay.
All right. Thanks for having me, Erica. So I got started with nutrition coaching a long time ago, but I before that I was blogging, and before that I was an avid dieter. I was an avid calorie counter, calorie cutter, carb watcher, all of those things where you see everything online, you go read a blog post, you go find an influencer, you say, this is what worked for me, or your coworker, right? This is what worked for me. And you try all these things, and maybe they last for a month, 2 months, maybe just a week. I don't know. But I tried all these different things, and nothing was sustainable for me. And so, because of all of this kind of like trial and error that I went through, I eventually found the world of macros. And I was like, okay, this makes things seem a little more sustainable. Like I can still have a glass of wine on the weekend. I can still have some pizza, or maybe even like a burger and fries if I wanted to. That sounds fun. And my intro to it has completely expanded since then. But when I first learned about it, I was like, okay, this flexible dieting world feels a lot more sustainable to me than something like no bread for the rest of my life, even if gluten-free, because I'm gluten-free. I know you are too. So yeah, like it just seemed like a lot more of a sustainable way to live while minding what I was eating and helping me reach my personal fitness goals. That's
I
what got
love
me into
it.
it in the first place.
Yeah, I love it. So, I hear a lot of yo-yo dieting conversation going on that you were having. You talk about that a little bit from your experience, what you experienced, whether physically and or emotionally. So then we can talk about the difference because I know a lot of women have been there, done that, and so many women are still searching out because they're searching for weight loss or health or a combination of both. And I want them to resonate with some of that experience, but then also where they could be when they start looking at their food differently.
Right, absolutely. I think it's such an important conversation as somebody who's been the yo-yo dieter, quote unquote, for many years, for better part of a decade, actually. I was stuck in this cycle of tracking all my food and like trying to stay under 1,500 calories a day. It started with 1,200 calories a day. And then I
Okay,
realized that wasn't.
I have to pause you for a minute. Why were you aiming for such low of calories?
um why. So I think I found something online, like an article or a calculator, right? There's a million of those calculators. You can find them if you just search whatever you're searching for, like weight loss calculator or macros calculator, whatever you want to find online. And I found a few of them, and I, kind of triangulated my way through like, okay, this would work for me. And so I found, this is like when I very first started to like try to lose
Mm.
weight, try to get into fitness. I realized I was, kind of softer all around. And so I wanted to lose body fat, right? I wanted to get back to like the athletic person that I felt like I was always growing up. And then, I was 25 years old and I wasn't fitting into my clothes anymore. So I was like doing 1,200 calories a day. It worked until it very much didn't, uh, which was short lived. But I saw the scale go down quickly, it's like this motivating thing when you see you have, results going for you. But then it got to a point where it's so unsustainable. So I was like, okay, I'll go up to 1,500. And then I tried to do that for years where I would go like Monday, start over. Okay, I'm starting over. And then I'd stay strong until about Friday. And then, I was in my 20s. So a lot of my coworkers would want to go out for like happy hour on a Friday. And I just remember being like, I'm going to stay strong. Like, I'm not going to eat before I go so that I can like have the extra calories. And I'd like strategize and like try to figure out how I'm going to be able to have a glass of wine or two or three or whatever I was drinking or whatever I was doing. How I'm not going to have the sweet potato fries. I'm going to stay away from the food. But like your willpower really just kind of goes out the window in those situations. And so I'd be hungry and be like, you know what, I'm starving. So I'm just going to eat. And so I remember I'd wake up on like by Sunday morning, and I'd step on that scale and it was up 3 pounds or whatever. And I'd freak out and I'd be like, I wasn't strong and I didn't stick to my plan. And this is what the result is. So what did I do on Monday? I'd start over. And so it was like this never ending cycle of, being strong, quote unquote, and like strategizing my snacks, eating cauliflower for snacks Monday through Friday, and then like totally blowing it on the weekends. Right. So that's kind of where all of this came from. And I think I answered your question, right? Why I started.
Yeah, I mean, this is very mentally exhausting and it's not healthy. And I know you'll be the first to admit that. I've had my own things with food when I was initially in college and I was studying dietetics, and I recognized I was starting to do some very weird, unhealthy things with food. So I dumped out of that, and I have since been more into health, or like, more natural health eating instead of from the kind of calorie counting diet perspective. And I know obviously you have made that shift as well. So let's get in and talk about macros. I feel like most people know what they are, but in case someone's listening and is like, I haven't, just share with everyone what macros is. So that way everybody knows as we're continuing this whole conversation.
Absolutely. So macros is just a word that's short for macronutrients, which is what all of our food is made up of. So macros are proteins, carbs and carbohydrates, and fat, dietary fat. So all food is made up or comprised of some amount of each of these things, and those equal up to the calories that we consume.
Okay, great. So we have protein, carbohydrates, and fat, which is what we're eating at every meal, what we should be eating at every meal. So when it comes to counting or tracking macros, it's not so much about counting, it's not about counting calories at all. It's really more about counting the amount.
It's about figuring out the balance essentially on your plate of, are you getting enough protein? Are we staying in range of our fat and carb intake? Because what tends to happen is people typically go low on protein and high on fat or carbs or both. People also tend to undereat, like I was, like perpetually. So that's another way to like check and make sure you're eating for your your metabolism, what it needs.
Yeah, I think the under eating thing is huge. That's why I pointed out initially when you were like only eating 1,200 to 1,500 calories, and you're an active young woman, and it's like that's definitely
I
too
was working out
low.
2 to 3 hours a day.
Yeah. So
trying to do that.
Which then actually sends your body into wanting to store the nutrients, the calories that you are eating, because your body's like, well, we have to conserve all this energy so that we can continue to exercise all of these 2 or 3 hours a day.
It was so defeatist. It was not working. It was this constant battle. I was in a constant battle.
So when it comes to how much to eat, because this is a common conversation I have with all my ladies, is I am telling them to eat more. Once we start to dial in, okay, what are we eating? And we need to be switching and eating healthy foods, obviously. But what's your best way to explain for women how to know that they're eating enough? Because women get scared, like, oh gosh, I'm eating more food, I'm going to gain weight. We have to talk about this.
Yeah, it's a big conversation. So, and this is something that the majority of my clients come to me under eating and coming from that place of a little bit scared of food potentially. There's like this fear of food or fear of gaining weight. However, if we're eating whole, natural, like organic, quality sources of food, not things from a package, not eating out a ton, like then you should generally be okay. However, you want to be looking, and I come at this from a very structured standpoint with macros, because we're looking at like numbers. There's like math involved here. So I look at, like, for me, I'm a 155-pound female. I know what I need based off of some calculations that I personally do. And I do these calculations for my clients as well, where we can say, okay, I like to always start at around 1 gram of protein per ideal pound of body weight. So for me, like 150 minimum is my goal for my protein needs per day. I try to hit over that because I also am training. I do weight training and I work out and I'm very active. And so I'm actually trying to do higher than that. So that's a great place to start with protein. And then as far as figuring out like if you're eating enough, I love the world of reverse dieting. And I think it's one of these tools. When I first learned about it a few years ago, I was like, what? This is incredible. Does this really work? Like, that sounds counterintuitive. How do we just increase our calories, but like get leaner and like people are losing inches? And how is this working? I was just like, what? So I was like, I have to do it.
I have to try it.
I got to try this. This sounds like too good to be true. And oh my God, my results after doing that, I was blown away. I always say like reverse dieting, going through that process absolutely changed my life, because I didn't realize that I had been perpetually under eating for over a decade, probably. Even when I was like eating healthy and eating like 2,000 calories a day, I thought that was a lot. Mm-hmm. It wasn't enough for me though. It wasn't enough for my lifestyle. And like this question that you asked about, how does somebody know? It's so personal. I can't like look at you, Erica, and say like, here's what you need. Like, there's a lot that goes into that. But going through a process of reverse dieting will allow someone to realize where their metabolism could actually, be sitting at today, and how high we could actually take it. So we increase that metabolic rate, we increase the calories burning at rest, you get better results from your workouts, you sleep better, you have better digestion, you have more energy. Like, there's just so many benefits from going through this process.
So can you explain reverse dieting? So you've said reverse dieting, but like what exactly does that mean?
Yes, I can. Okay. So reverse dieting is when it's in the process of when someone's counting their macros and tracking their macros, right? So it's kind of like a subset of macros. And what it is you are bringing your overall calories up. Usually we do this with carbohydrates. So we keep our protein high, and we usually do this with carbs and fat a little bit, but we bring up your overall caloric intake slowly, week by week, maybe 50 calories, maybe 100 calories. Maybe some people can go up to 150, but typically around that range of 50 to 100 calories week by week, until we get to maintenance. So maintenance is this place where your body is not gaining weight, not losing weight, but if you are giving it the right stimulus of muscle building workouts, muscle promoting nutrition, you're going to start to see a body recomposition happen where we lose body fat and we gain muscle.
Well, I love the idea of the reverse dieting, because dieting never works for anyone in the long term. Looking at something as a restrictive diet and cutting things out. And again, it's not good for our mental health either. And I can testify wholeheartedly that eating more, again, to the guidelines, Shay, that you talked about, it's protein forward. And when you eat more good quality animal protein, I'll let you talk about that in a minute. But when you're forward with that, and I know for myself, like I have to really try to make myself eat enough food. Like if I am not paying a lot of attention to what I'm eating because I'm busy, and I'm like, okay, now I got to eat some food. So I make myself a quick meal and then I'm on to work and I don't eat enough, I can tell. Yeah. I really can tell. And I can tell that when I am fueling my body the correct way, it's work and I have to eat more food and I actually feel better. It sounds counterintuitive and counterproductive, but I think we've been so ingrained in this dieting world and we have got to get out of it. We have to get
Yeah.
out of it, and we have to not be afraid of eating food, especially healthy, nutrient dense food. But I can verify that this works. I will be honest for everyone listening and for you, Shay, I'm not someone that likes to count. I have done some counting, but that is something for me that I think because of the work that I do, I just I just have to eat. And I kind of have an idea what's in food, so I know. But for me, that's kind of how I do. I have checked macros and things, and it is amazing. And even if those of you listening are like me and you're like, oh, I don't really like to track, I will challenge you all to do it for a couple days just to give you a baseline of where you're at. I think doing a little bit of tracking can really tell you because I'll feel like sometimes, okay, I'm eating a lot of good nutrient dense food and a lot of good, healthy protein. And then I'm like, oh, I'm still short a
So
lot.
I want to touch on this because I do think there are different types of people who have different caloric needs, right? So just knowing you, your body type, just knowing a little bit more about you, and we've kind of met in person, and I've seen your like body type, and we have very different body types. But I am the type of person that will probably always eat at my maintenance calories because I am a hungry person. I always say, like, I'm a hungry woman and I'm an eater. I've always been an eater. I have never been the type of person who like forgets to eat or just doesn't eat or skips a meal. I've never done that. And there's kind of like two people, like, there's like people who can skip the meals and they're fine. And I have friends like this, and I think you sounded like you were like that a little bit. And then there's people like me. And so there's the people who I'm going to just speak to the people who are hungry, who are like, I'm an eater. Those are the people that macros can be magical for, because I had a tendency to be eating improperly balanced meals where I'd go way over, and my issue is fat. I'd go way over on my fat macros without realizing it when I wasn't tracking. And so that was causing my body composition to be less than optimal, my performance to be less than optimal. And then this is where like we now have an imbalanced plate without even realizing it, because studies have shown humans aren't great at estimating the amounts of foods that they're eating. Okay. So if we're not great at that, and you're an eater and you like to eat food like I do, then tracking macros gives you this kind of like, all right, I got my like structured plan here. I've got my guardrails that I can kind of go in. And I know that as long as I have like this, and this at each meal, I'm good. And I'm not gonna get off track, and I'm not gonna, lose my body composition, that kind of thing. So I think it can be a really great tool for people who are super hungry or have those bigger appetites, like I do, or who are really focused on like muscle and muscle building.
No, thank you for clarifying that. I do the muscle building thing I think is huge. That's where I would fall into that category of I know as I've gotten a little older, I don't build muscle near as quickly as I did when I was younger. And I noticed the difference in my workouts and my recovery when I am making sure that for me personally, I'm eating more but in that balanced way. So anyway, that is a very interesting that you recognize there's like the two different body types
It
and
really is.
yeah.
It's kind of like, I always think of it like with FDN, it's like your metabolic type. It might be something to do with like slow and fast oxidizers. I'm always trying to make that correlation. I don't think there's any science to back it up, but it's something that I'm keeping in mind too. Like, I am a fast oxidizer, and therefore I kind of go through carbs pretty quickly. So I need to eat more like heavy, like protein and like fats. But are you a slow?
I'm a mixed.
You're a mixed. Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah.
then you have like a good balance. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is the balance. And I've personally noticed I've tried, and I think it's good to experiment with things, right? I've tried where I'm eating really low carbs and I don't do well. I just don't. And I think this is the whole thing too. And we don't need to talk about this too much, but like you were mentioning you eating too much fat. And I think that's where like the keto diet, again, I know eating high fat can work really well for some. And I think it's different for men versus women. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit. You predominantly work with all women.
I do. I
Yeah.
typically work with like all my clients are women. I have worked with a few men. I think it kind of like is related to like intermittent fasting a little bit too, right? It's keto and
Yeah.
everything. And so I typically do not recommend that for my ladies, for my female clientele, because you know, we do need more of a mixed. Even me, like I'm technically a fast oxidizer, but I lean toward more of the middle of the mixed, and I need the carbs. And I think I think women especially do better with a little bit broader like uh, balance here.
Hmm.
Whereas men can get away with like doing the keto, maybe it's short-term keto, or they can get away with like intermittent fasting for a lot longer periods, where women, it's like, let's keep it to 12 hours. Like that's enough. That's kind of my thought
Okay,
on it.
that's interesting you brought that up because intermittent fasting, I've talked about it and I've heard so many people talk about it, and it is a massive array of expertise out there. And I would love to hear what, so you said 12 hours. So that's what you see, and working with your female clients, that's what you see seems to work the best. So you're all for women eating basically a solid breakfast,
Yes,
three
I'm
meals
all
a
myself
day.
3 meals, and even more than that. I actually tell most of my clients we probably want to go for 4 and sometimes 5, like, and those are like snacks in certain cases. And we customize schedules. We're very big on like, what does your schedule look like? When are you waking up? When are you going to bed? What is your work day like? Like, are you a nurse on your feet for 14 hours a day? Or are you like at a desk and at a computer from like 9 to 5? Like, what is your situation? And I think all of that plays a part in the recommendations we would give to someone on whether they would, you know, benefit from fasting or not, or benefit from I don't really recommend keto ever. I'll just say that. But the one thing I will say is if you are in a reverse diet as that particular phase, or a surplus in macros is what we call this, surplus, where you would actually be focusing on like really gaining muscle. If you're in those phases, you need to be eating more, and people often have a hard time eating more in just one sitting if they have like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and maybe a snack somewhere in between. So in that case, I would say we need to expand our eating window beyond the 12 hours. It might need to be like you are eating 14 hours, right when you wake up, all the way to, you know, an hour before bed or something like that, if you're in a reverse diet phase where we are actively trying to increase your metabolism. So, and we do that through helping your body eat more and adapt to that along the way.
That makes a lot of sense. And I want one thing I want to reiterate is what I hear you saying is we are changing what we're doing. I think so many women get set on like, this is the way to eat and this is how I'm going to eat forever. And I think we have to recognize that we need to be more cyclical with things. What is our goals? What do we want to obtain? Because generally, I would say from a health perspective, I want people to stop snacking because if you've got digestive issues, right, we want that longer time in between for to improve motility. But if your goal is weight loss or gaining muscle, like you're saying, and right now you need to increase and have a surplus of good quality calories and protein and things like that, then maybe you need to do that for a period of time.
Yeah.
But once you get into like a maintenance,
Yeah.
you agree that you try to get
Yeah.
back to those three
Exactly.
solid meals. Okay.
3 solid meals. It depends on the type of like workouts people are doing. So like if you're gonna go do like a heavy lifting like early in the morning, like I do, you might need to have like a little something beforehand. I used to do fasted workouts, and I do think it contributed negatively to my hormonal health, to my overall like energy levels. I started to crash. I started to crash a lot in the afternoon. So I started adding in just like a small, like maybe like 100 calories balanced, you know, blood sugar type of snack. And then I would go work out. Your body's using that, burning it right away. And then go eat your big breakfast, your lunch, And the problem I typically saw was between lunch and dinner. So people would be going like 7 hours not eating. And instead of that, I would say, and they would come home and we have to look at like, yeah, ideally, like you'd want someone to have like the 3 big meals, but let's look at reality for a second and like what is happening between your lunch and your dinner. Like an average person, if you're working full time, you come home like after you have all these meetings all afternoon. People usually are tired in the afternoon. They're having like some level of like circadian rhythm issues potentially, or maybe some sleep issues that cause that afternoon crash. And then they come home and they're like starving. So maybe they don't even make it home. They're hitting up the vending machine on their way to the car, or they're going through a drive-through, or they're getting a snack and they're going for the chips right when they walk in the door because they're just depleted. And so this is what I'm seeing. And then that is what's derailing things. So if we can find a really quality snack, good, like I call it a mini meal, like that's the ideal situation, like maybe like half portion of your lunch, like, protein, like a sweet potato or rice, and then like maybe some arugula or some, like, and something like that, where it's like a balanced, smaller mini meal there between lunch and dinner. That just helps to like level people out so much. And so they can make it to dinner. And so
That
I've
makes a lot of sense.
four
Yeah.
like 3 big meals and then like a mini meal can make a huge difference for people's adherence to their their nutrition program and what they're trying to do to help them get to their goals.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you for clarifying all of that, because I think that's probably a lot of people listening are like, "Oh, that's me. I'm coming
It's
home. I'm
reality, you know?
starving."
Yeah, it's reality. I remember I was the same way. I would be like, I am not going to eat I'm not going to eat after this lunch. I'm going to stay strong. I used to like pep talk myself. And then I would like walk into the break room at work back when I worked in a corporate setting. And like somebody would have left like leftover donuts or something like that. And I'd be like, well, I'm just going to have a little bite.
And that doesn't work.
Famous last words, right? Bite turns into half the donut, half the donuts, might as well have the whole donut. And then it's like, what did I do? Like,
And then you have the sugar crash after
and then you
it.
have the crash. And then you are
Mhm.
just like, well, my day is ruined. So who cares what I eat? Go pour a glass of wine when I get home. And so it's just like we have to, there's ideal situations, and then there's like, let's let reality like help us plan our day a little bit here. And that's how we focus on creating these systems and these habits, because now you can fall to that system even in like your worst of times.
So what are some of the top benefits you're seeing for women beside that fall into doing and looking at more at their macros, making sure they're eating enough food, timing it right? Like maybe you said, maybe it's adding an extra meal or two right now. What are, besides weight loss and building muscle, what are some of the other benefits you're seeing with your clients
Yeah.
and yourself?
Yeah. Um, so just for me personally, the biggest change was, oh my God, I didn't realize that like I was a little bit like hungry all the time and like starving myself in a sense before. And so once I went through it and I got to this higher like maintenance calorie intake, I was like, I feel so good. I feel like I have like energy and vitality and like vigor. And like, I just felt like I have been missing this for who knows how long, most of my life. And I felt so much better. So, and energy, like mental clarity is a big one. So people who come to me will start a reverse diet and they'll say, I have like a brain fog that has just lifted. Like the veil
Okay.
has lifted.
So, okay, that's fascinating that you just said that. So, what does that mean? Those of you listening who experience brain fog, which is I know a lot, because a lot of moms were tired, exhausted, but maybe you're not nourishing your body enough. If your brain is not getting enough nutrients, that's a problem. That's a
Yeah.
problem. And one thing we don't realize is that our brain uses so many calories. Like I've looked into this. I don't know if you know the stats and stuff, but I know it's interesting. I just remember back in like college, right? And I even know my oldest now, right, studying for tests and all this kind of stuff. And you are like, you'll be so hungry after studying and after a test. And you're like, but I've done nothing but sit on my butt for half of a day or whatever it is. But it's because your brain is using up so much of the
Energy.
nutrition that you have eaten. And I think sometimes when we think a lot of us live too much of a sedentary lifestyle. We'll get in and talk about movement a little bit, but sitting even. But if you're so focused and you're using your brain in ways that are really getting you thinking, you're using a lot more calories for brain function than you
Absolutely.
realize. We don't talk enough about that.
And I think I have this in my program somewhere where it's like you've got to, if you're, studying for a huge test or whatever it might be, like maybe you're like, doing a big launch or working overtime at your job, and you're like, oh my God, you have that moment of like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. Like my brain, I hit a wall. Like you've been burning calories. Like it's not the same as if you were like going on a run maybe, but you are burning calories. And so having some amount of carbohydrate again in the diet is important. It should be complex, ideally from like whole natural sources that grow in the ground. But absolutely, this is where like having, a piece of like half a banana and some almond butter can really just like bring you back to have some
Yeah.
energy, just so that can continue on with the day, because absolutely that makes a huge difference.
Okay. So what were some of the, I know we kind of got stuck on sleep.
Oh yeah,
Or not sleep, sorry. Uh,
benefits.
brain fog. What were some of the benefits? I mentioned sleep. So
So
are you seeing your clients and
yes,
yourself like have
yes.
better quality sleep?
So sleep is a tricky one because it could be so many different things. But yes, I have had multiple of my clients report that, oh my God, I'm sleeping so much better. Like I can't believe, not only do they have energy during the day, but now they're sleeping through the night. And I remember one of my clients was like, I have so much energy. Like I've never slept so good in my life. And now I have so much energy to keep up with my two little kids, during the day, which is exactly what she wanted. Better digestion is another one. So something that people don't realize, and I can't remember where I learned this or where I gleaned this information, but I read this before, where people who undereat, and I used to have terrible digestive issues. I'm talking, I didn't go for like 2 weeks. Okay. So
Wow.
I would have like bouts of diarrhea to constipation and like bloating and heartburn and like just every imaginable like Pepto-Bismol symptom. That was me. Okay. And this was when I was like really under eating like the 1,500 calories and like trying to like keep my calories low so I could lose weight and lose fat. So I remember that I read this thing where it said, when you aren't eating enough, your digestive system has to work overtime and overdrive to extract every little nutrient that it possibly can to get from the food you do eat. So now your digestive system is like stressed out, in addition to already doing all of the jobs it has to do. And so it can cause a lot of digestive issues. And so I see people who have like constipation all the time. We see this especially like once people hit like in their 30s and up, like they start to have that a lot. And so this is something that's really like, they're like, oh my God, I've never been more regular in my life. I didn't know this was possible for me. I didn't know I had somebody who, she's like, she wasn't going, but every about 10 days
Oh,
on like,
wow.
yeah, wasn't going, but about every 10 days. And she goes, I've always had dreams to go to like Italy, and I never, like me and my husband always wanted to do this, but because of these digestive and health issues, whenever I travel, I don't go. And so she's like, so it's just been off the table, because I can't just go for 2 weeks and not go to the bathroom. Like that, it was like a hindrance for her to even just go on a dream vacation. And within 3 months of working with me, she's like every other day. Now, obviously, we want to get that to every day, but like that's drastic from 10 days to every other day.
That is That is huge.
It's
So,
huge, right?
question with that. I do have a question about that because constipation comes up a lot in conversations because I talk a lot about pelvic floor and core health, and obviously our digestion matters.
Mhm.
So, are you seeing, is it because they're eating, they're not fueling their body with the nutrients they need. So then their digestive system, and it also has more bulk to actually move through. They're to
Move through.
push stuff out, right? So before, if you're starving your body, it's it's got a kind of a pecking order. It's going to
Yeah.
choose to pick out all the nutrients, and the motility is lacking because it's like, no, we're not going to move the food through because we need to extract every little bit of nutrients. Is that the thought process to like what's going
So
on?
that's part of it. That's what I've read once. Also, when we don't eat enough food, your body, like you said, the pecking order. So your body is going to be like, okay, what do we need to survive in this situation? Food is scarce. So what do we need to prioritize? And digestion and hormones, those are some of the first things to go. What's got to happen is you need your heart, you need your lungs, you need to be able to breathe. So it's going to start to prioritize the bigger processes of your brain, things that are very, very important for your survival, and deprioritize things that like aren't. So like reproduction, not that important in that situation, right? So your hormones start to become a problem, and this creates that cascade of effect, right? And it's just everything else starts to go downhill just because you're not eating enough food.
That is fascinating. And I know, ladies, there's a lot of you listening that deal with constipation. So this is a very, very important conversation and one worth experimenting with. Even I always tell people, experiment with your food. We get easily so stuck in kind of what we're eating, and it can seem to be work to change things up. But the changing things up, trying new things, see how you feel.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That is
Yeah.
extremely fascinating and something that I hadn't actually really, I probably thought about it before,
It's
but don't come across a whole lot, right?
it's this thought of like when people are at this like weight loss resistance, and this is where a lot of people come to me, right? They've dropped their calories as low as they can go. Shay, I'm eating 1,100 calories a day. I can't lose any more weight, but I can't keep going down. What the heck do I do from here? And those are my prime reverse diet folks, my prime reverse diet candidates, because we can't keep going down. You are correct, Pam. We need to start going up. And also those are the people who have the brain fog, who aren't sleeping through the night, who have no energy, right? Who have digestive issues or not going to the bathroom very often. And so when we're building health, when a reverse diet is truly a health building process. And of course, we're bringing in like the whole foods, the natural sources, cooking your own food and not always ordering out all the time. And things like that, of course, are super important and always play a part in this. But yeah, it's this, your body's in sort of like a starvation mode. It's going to store every little thing. Like you said earlier, it's going to store every little thing because it needs a rainy day fund. Because you're not giving, like, so this is what happens when people, this is the real life situation. You're eating 1,100 calories a day, and then something happens like a party or a vacation or a holiday or something on the weekend, right? And then there's this extreme calorie surplus in that situation, typically, where it could be you ate 3,500 calories a day and you don't even realize it, between eating and drinking and this little bite here and that little bite here, you don't even realize it. And that's when the body's like, okay, let's hold on to this. We have some food now. Let's hold on to it all. And then, because we know we're not going to get food. And so this is like the whole starvation mentality, right? And so what we're trying to do when we're reverse dieting is bring it back into balance so we don't have these like huge peaks and valleys and extended valleys, really, at that. And so the body's like, oh, we can trust that we're getting regular food on a regular basis. And now I don't have the need to store all of this excess body fat. I have less of a need for the rainy day fund. And that's where the magic of eating more and losing inches comes into light.
Yeah, I have always been so fascinated when I finally figured that out too, because I was not taught that back at university. It was all about calorie deficit, exercise more to lose weight. And it's like, well, we know
Yeah.
that's not true. And we also know that not all calories are created equal either. That's why we always talk about eating
Oh
nutrient
yeah.
dense quality food. It does matter. So, Shay, let's talk about the mindset of shifting from the focus for losing fat and instead of being so focused on, oh, I want to lose this body fat, I want to lose this weight, right? Can we shift it over to gaining muscle, which we know muscle is more dense than fat. And that is really the way we need to be looking at all of this. So, talk about how you approach that.
Yeah. So let's see. When people are so focused on fat loss, it's essentially the mindset is I need to eat less, I need to lose something, I need to be smaller, I need to make myself smaller. So think about that mindset right there, right? Like you're like, okay, I need to be a smaller person. I need to be less. I need to restrict more. It just doesn't feel that great. It's like this very lack mentality. When we start to focus on what we want to promote, like let's look at the positive then. If we don't want fat, what takes care of fat? Muscle. So let's look at muscle. If we can make that shift to, okay, if I start eating for muscle and more of like a performance world, right? Like how am I operating on a daily basis? How is my energy on a daily basis? All of those things matter. What do we get to bring into the diet that is going to help promote muscle? What do we get to have now? How can I make this expand and be bigger because we want more muscle? We're always losing muscle. As soon as women hit like age 30 or so, you're losing like half a pound of muscle a year unless you're actively working on building it. So since we're losing it always, and your body's always breaking down amino acids to help repair other systems in your body, we need that protein source and we need muscle promoting workouts. So that is where when we can go shift from that lack mentality of I need to be less, I need to eat less, I need to restrict, to what do I get to bring in? What do I get to have? And maybe that crowds out some of the things that weren't serving you in the first place. It's just so much more of an abundant mindset, a positive mindset, and it makes you feel like, okay, I get to have things instead of always thinking about what's not, what I shouldn't have. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And when we can shift that way, you are setting yourself up for success because
Mhm.
we know and research shows if we're restricting ourselves and that's all we're thinking about, then that's all we want. All we want is what we tell ourselves we can't have. And when we shift it in a positive way of what we get to have, what we get to do more of, what we get to fuel ourselves with, then you're not depleting your body. It's so amazing.
Yeah, it's so, it feels so much more, I don't know what the word is here, but like it feels a lot easier to think, okay, I get to bring all of these things in versus like less, less, less. And so just we talk about mindset a lot in my program, and we talk about how we can make these shifts from lack to abundance and creating your future self and all of that. And when we start to bring this focus on muscle, muscle is like this organ of longevity. Muscle is the thing that gives people strength and energy and is good for things like, I know you're just talking to Kevin Ellis, bone health and like all of this stuff. It's so important. And so if you're the type of person who wants to be able to do yoga when you're 75, 85 years old, or walk as far as you want to walk when you're that age as well, which I know people who do that in that age range, those people are crushing it. And they are some of the healthiest people, even though they're, well into their 70s and 80s, because they've made this focus of movement and muscle.
Yeah, let's talk about workouts for a bit.
Yeah.
Because again, women can tend to think cardio, cardio, cardio. We got to burn the calories. And although a lot of ladies listening is because they're gonna know what we're gonna talk about, what we're gonna say, because I've said it before, but we'll say it again.
Yes.
What do you recommend from a workout perspective?
Yeah. So I love strength training, lifting weights. I am a big fan of lifting heavy weights, picking up some stuff that is it requires an exertion on a lot of people I'm seeing are doing these workouts where they think they're strength training. I was one of those people at one point where they're picking up a pair of like 5-10 pound dumbbells and they're doing some curls and they're doing some lateral raises and things like that, and they might get a little burn. What I'm talking about is if you can do more than like 10 of a rep, and you should be able to get to a point where it's like, I can't do 11. I can't muster up the strength to do another rep here. So we want to get to that point of getting to failure and having this theory of like this progressive overload where over time you're increasing your weight, you're increasing your time under tension, you're increasing the reps you're doing over, with the same weight. That would work too. And getting to a place where you're actually feeling like your muscles, and there's like a mind muscle connection with this, and I'm sure you know a lot more about that than I do, but yes, there's a mind muscle connection with this where you're like, okay, I can actually feel these things working, and oh my gosh, like I'm doing this arm workout, but I can feel it in my core. Like it's not just a little curl workout, right? So we want to work on these big muscle groups, compound lifts, deadlifts, squats, bench or chest press, overhead press, rowing. Those are the big muscle groups to work. And that's going to be like way more bang for your buck than just trying to do some like light arm workouts and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you learn to connect through your body, although I will add to the counter of that because I do teach some lightweight stuff and I teach a lot of body weight stuff as well. And I second the weights. I'm all for that. I think variety is key as well in there. When you're doing the lighter weights, when you're doing the body weight, the bands, things like that, the piece to keep in mind is what Shay just said about connecting through your body. We're learning to be more connected through our body. So then when we add on the heavier weights, we're getting stronger. We're not just doing a bicep curl, we're working all of the right muscles. And then those workouts become so much more effective. And that's what I'm always preaching is make those workouts more effective, become more connected with your body, be more intuitive, more body aware, all of those things. And then you're going to be stronger faster. And don't be afraid. And I say this to my ladies, especially in Core Studio, because my ladies are in there, it's always, okay, now if this is getting too light for you, next time you go to the store, you need to pick up the next set of weights, right? Do not be afraid to get the heavier weights. And then if you get them home and you can only do 8 reps, that's okay. I think we get sometimes scared to like bulk up and that's not going to happen, ladies. It's not going to happen. And like you said, because you said age 30, which is always so crazy to me that to think that's when our muscle mass can start to decrease if we're not working out, we're not working to build the muscle. So you have to be actively doing it. And when you have those little thoughts that come in your head of like, oh, I'm afraid, like you have to say, no, this is what my body needs. We need to be strong. And I love hearing from my ladies when they're like, Erica, like I remember this one lady, she had messaged me. She was like, I'm so glad I've been doing your Core Studio workouts because I tripped in a hole the other day and I was able to crawl my way all the way back to the house. She's like, I was strong enough to do that. And I've heard from ladies, it's so many times we think of like our workouts and our exercises just for exercise. And it's like, no, make the connection to how it's helping you in your daily life, whether that's picking up your kids, whether that's getting you out of pain, which I talk about all the time, right? Whether it's like we have the 5-gallon things of water, then they're glass jars, so they're even heavier than they're not 5-gallon. Yeah, they're 5-gallon or the big jugs. Yeah. And changing those things, they're heavy. And for me, I'm always like, I can change them. But when I had my health stuff like 4.5 years ago, I couldn't easily lift those things because I got so weak. So it was so interesting to have been in that position to been like, I've never felt,
Yeah.
I had never felt that weak before in my life because I couldn't work out at that time. And so many times I think we take our strength for granted. So those of you that have the strength, don't lose it, keep working on it. Those of you that were like I was 4 years ago, where I wasn't able to work out and I lost so much strength.
Mm-hmm.
And you then realize, oh my gosh, like you have to work on it so you can do the daily things in life, like picking up the big bags of dog food. Like we don't so many times think of those things unless we've had an incident where we've gotten really weak or we've gotten ourselves to a place where we no longer have the strength. It is so important. Okay, I can get off
Yeah.
my
I
rabbit
was
hole
gonna just
of the importance of strength
I
training,
just
but
wanted
yeah,
to
please
touch
dive.
on one piece of the what you said is like, there is a point for bands and lighter weights. And I do those things too. I'm doing bands, I'm doing sets of 30, of like different like things. However, what I see people miss is like that's all they're doing and they're not picking up some of the heavier stuff and they're afraid to like go into this. And I always say like, if you've never had someone teach you how to work out properly, it's one of the best investments you can ever make is to just go learn from somebody who's done it before you, who can teach you. There's this whole like world of, I want to get healthy and fit, but I don't want to look like an idiot in the gym, right? And I totally get that. Gym intimidation is a real thing. So if you've never had, someone teach you, like absolutely get the help, invest in yourself and get that help because, now I've never been, I'm not a certified trainer. I'm a certified nutrition coach, but I know how to work out because I have had people teach me for so long. And so I think there's a place, like I said, like there's always a place for lighter weights. There's always a place for bands. I mean, heck, body weight, like for push-ups are hard.
Yes, they
Push-ups and
are.
pull-ups are one of the hardest movements that we can do and requires no equipment. Those are free.
Absolutely. And I will just add to that what you said, because as a certified personal trainer, and when I do get to work with women, it's so empowering when I'll have a woman come to me who knows all ages, right? If they've never been taught how to lift, then I get to teach her. I get to create her routines. They do not have to be complex. They do not have to be complex. I think so many times we get intimidated by the complexity of things, and it can be super simple. And yet you can have these amazing workouts that you can do so you feel confident going into the gym or having your routines at home. Like you don't have to go to the gym. Obviously, I teach online workouts. I work out at home a lot myself. Kettlebells are amazing. Like get yourself a kettlebell, ladies, if you don't have one, because you can do a lot with even just one kettlebell. But my
Absolutely.
point being is to add to that is yes, I can verify as on that trainer side. I'll have women come to me and they're like, I don't know, I don't even know where to start. So I've seen that and I can tell you it's amazing what even just if you're someone who wants to go to a gym, right? Or maybe you have a membership and you haven't been using it, a couple sessions can really go a long way towards building some amazing confidence. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, Shay, this has been absolutely amazing. So will you share with everybody where they can reach out to you if they have questions, learn more about everything that you're teaching?
Yeah. So I am on Instagram. So I have my handle is at the Body Bulletin. And that is also my website, thebodybulletin.com, and my blog slash, website, the blog that I've had for so long. And then also I do have a checklist, a macros checklist. Like if you're somebody who's, interested in like starting this world of macros and would love to learn more, I have a free just counting macros guide for you. So you can go to go.thebodybulletin.com/macros checklist.
Perfect. I'll put the links in the show notes so that people
Okay.
can find them easily. So thank you so much, Shay.
Thank you so much, Erica. So fun.